Okay, well, firstly, Geoff, thank you for joining
Martin,
me on this first snowy day in Illinois.
you wouldn't know by looking out the window that there is no snow on the ground, but this morning there absolutely was snow on
Oh
the
my
ground.
word, this morning was a blizzard, a micro
Too
blizzard.
early in the year, too
Yeah,
early.
too
Yeah,
early, I know. So it's great seeing you.
nice seeing you.
Um, you know, we have worked together now for probably about 8 years, I would say, maybe a
Probably, yeah.
decade. I think we've become friends over the years. I would call you a friend. I mean,
You're stretching that a little bit. No,
yeah.
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding, of course. But yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. We both live in the Chicagoland area,
Do.
and of course we both have
On very opposite sides
very
of
opposite
Chicago.
sides.
So
Absolutely,
when you said to me, "Hey, why don't you come by the studio today?" I didn't realize what type of epic travel
commute.
commitment
Yeah.
I'd be making.
It's an adventure.
So I did use your word in various different phrases, non-complimentary, of course, as I was driving down the highway getting here. Like, where am I? Why did I ever say yes to this? Why did my team say yes to this?
Oh, blame your team. I like that.
Never blame your team. It's always on you as the leader.
Yeah. But I am appreciative that you made the trek out. Yeah. The other thing that's common between us is that we actually have the same mission or passion. And that is to help organizations that run, a particular technology we know is called SAP, to maximize it.
Your mission's broader than just SAP, but I know you do a lot outside of SAP.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it really is about how do you get companies to maximize their technological investment, period. Like get value
Get
out of it.
value from it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
100%.
And so in your case, very
Isn't
specific.
SAP by its own definition, Martin, just a walking value proposition? That you can just
I think
the
if you
value
read the-
bubble over.
I think if you read the brochure, for sure. And every year the brochure looks different. There's the same mission.
It's same glossy.
Yeah, same glossy. Yeah, exactly. Different picture. And to add to that, you have a storied career.
Storied.
Yes.
That word doesn't always have the right kind of connotation.
Well, we'll let you.
Exemplary, interesting.
Let's go with interesting, because you can
Storied.
tell us more about how exemplary
I
it
don't
was.
know if it's that exemplary.
And very, technologically at first, and now you're the CEO of this organization,
Yeah.
America's SAP Users Group. Tell me just about ASUG.
Well, ASUG is the North American customer community for SAP, right? So our
And
mission,
the largest one in the world.
the largest one in the galaxy. My friends at the German-speaking user group, who probably won't hear this, but maybe if they do, would probably take umbrage with me calling it the biggest. But I think, North America is obviously a very large market for SAP. So we kind of pride ourselves on representing about 130,000 SAP professionals here in North America. So, US, Canada, who are responsible for, what I think about that's so important about what we do is not just about how the organization gets value out of the software.
Right.
It's also how the individual as a profession gets value out of that career they've made in SAP. And what I find to be so phenomenally interesting is most individuals that you come across are not in a situation where they know SAP plus Oracle plus Workday plus a number of the other top tier products. They know one or the other. And so these individuals have really made a commitment to their career to be in this ecosystem. And sometimes, and you're going to ask me other questions about my professional background, I did start to notice as I was a CIO that people, if you weren't careful, kind of identified more with the software product than they did with the organization they worked for. Because they could take that knowledge of the software product and take it down the street to the others running that software product if they needed to. So it became more important for them to be identified with SAP or Oracle or Workday or Salesforce or whatever have you, than to necessarily be identified with Ford or General Motors or Boeing or all the other multiple companies. I picked the top ones, but SAP has value from maybe $500 million of annual revenue up to the bigger and bigger than multi-trillion dollars.
It is.
Trillion word is now out there. I think Elon Musk has $1 trillion pay package. So
Yeah,
I guess
I
we
don't-
exited the $1 billion phase and we're now in the trillion.
But I don't think
phase.
that Tesla runs SAP, do they?
No,
No.
I don't think Tesla. Runs
probably-
SAP. I don't
they
have the
probably built their
whole
own,
encyclopedia in my head, but I'm not familiar with Tesla running SAP.
SAP. It's interesting you say that because, if you think about the SAP story with the 5 engineers from IBM, in the 70s, decided to go and build the software because IBM thought it was in hardware, not in software. It's a beautiful story. But that shows you that technology is, or the company and the platforms that they built is what's it now, 50 years old, right?
Yeah, I was over in Germany for their 50-year anniversary. And to think about that.
Which is crazy.
So but back to mission, what I also think is important as ASUG and all of us working in this ecosystem is to ensure that SAP is also relevant over the next 50 years.
Yeah.
So it sees its 100th year anniversary, right? I think that's phenomenally important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, in many ways, it's the enterprise version of Microsoft, right? Everybody has some version of SAP nowadays, at least if you're a 500 million revenue and above kind of company.
You would have that, or you would have something akin to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think for, that $500 million, and SAP may quibble with me and say, no, Geoff, you're coming way too high. It should be 300. Okay. What's a couple $100 million amongst friends?
Right.
But, if you have aspirations to be a multi-billion-dollar company, if that's where your trajectory is taking you, then something like an SAP has to be in your planning process. And why? Because it provides process structure and guidance that you will need to unlock that value.
That's right. Yeah.
And you see that, you talk to your clients all the time, and that's one of the things that they think about, right? Why? And some days, we have this existential question, why am I running this thing? Right? It's, for certain days, it can add more pain than it could add joy. And I think for most customers, it's because it is a process consistency.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for the update on ASUG and the vision around. I think that's exactly right.
Welcome.
And I think what I love to address with you on that is, I'm going to come back to that actually, as a matter of fact, because we're going to get into your career a little bit.
That's not that interesting.
Yeah, but before that, I even want to ask you even a more interesting question.
All right, now my defenses are up.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were a little boy,
when I was a little boy,
what did you want to grow up to be?
A rock star. Don't you want to be a fireman? A sports, you want to be if you're in North America, a baseball player, or you're from that, from another continent, so cricket player perhaps,
maybe rugby,
rugby,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Or football, as known by us as soccer, or football in the other parts of the world. So you want to be a fireman or a police officer. Or you want to be you want to be a professional sports star, an astronaut, right? I think I wanted for the longest time to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And then when I was going through high school, I wanted to be an architect. And because I enjoy drawing buildings and I enjoy drawing homes. And my teacher pulled me aside one day and said, you're going to be good at this, but you can't make any money in architecture. So why don't you try something else? And I was like, well, that seems really unpleasant because I really enjoy this.
Yeah.
So I went through college and started off in finance and decided that finance was way too much math and way too esoteric for my tastes. So if you don't want to do finance, you get to the next logical thing is just accounting. Which, so my undergraduate degree was in accounting. And why I did that, and it comes back to this whole career trajectory thing, Martin, that you're asking about, is I really want to understand, how does money move around an organization?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about accounting. So finance was a little too esoteric for me, but accounting, and there's like, oh my God, the guys in accounting, so boring. But the thing is that it really teaches you how do organizations move money, because at the end of the day, it's about money, right? You go into business to make money, right? You get revenue, you get expenses, you get OBIT. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful that for whatever reason, I wandered into this. So my career started off in accounting, graduated the degree in accounting, went to work in public accounting, where I quickly realized that was not what I wanted to do. I started off in tax, of all things, and I've got to be careful because my wife is a tax CPA, and so if I get too denigrating about tax accountants, she gets really upset because she's been very successful doing that. So I was sitting in the law library reading through IRS regulations, which at the time you and I were back in the 1800s. It was thousands of little tiny pages, tissue thin, and I fell asleep in a volume of tax law. I said, this is not for me. I also decided I didn't want to be a lawyer, so this is definitely not for me. So I jumped to consulting. I said, if I'm not going to do accounting, then the next cool thing to be was, how do you make businesses more efficient?
Yeah.
And then the leading thing to make businesses more efficient is technology. So I jumped into consulting and started doing big IT programs. And that's kind of how I started. And then I jumped out. And then I jumped into, a couple years later into automotive, and I started to do my big ERP implementations in automotive. I had responsibility for the deployment of a leading HR package into everywhere around the world. And then from there, I went into food, and I became a CIO for the first time, responsible for one of the largest, protein companies in the world, implementing SAP. And we were going through a multi-year, kind of re-engineering. And this is the thing about SAP, Oracle, Workday, you're perpetually re-engineering.
Yeah,
you know this.
right.
It's the word that never stops. And so I was at an interesting point in my career there where I had the choice between Oracle or SAP. We were running both.
Yeah.
And my CFO said, you have the choice of one. And I said, why one when you can have two? He said, because I'm not paying the maintenance bill for two. And it was fairly sizable. And I said, okay. So we had a bake-off between SAP and Oracle, and I chose SAP for a lot of reasons, right? And, neither one is good or bad. We could have run both, but we weren't going to run both. We were going to run one.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to work for a small fashion company where they were moving. And again, they had aspirations to be this big, major fashion apparel company. And they were implementing SAP because their previous set of systems were in disarray. They'd well grown out of that, and they were keeping them together with bubble gum and, and twine, right? And so we did all that, moved them onto SAP. And then from there, I was asked to kind of join ASUG. I'd always been an ASUG member. I felt that being, if we're going to run
But
SAP,
you're giving back, right? A little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, when I was working for almost a $30 billion protein company, I needed a pipeline of great SAP talent. So we wanted to be present in the community.
Yeah.
So the community knew who we were, what we were, why we were.
Yeah.
So people go, oh, I know that name. I want to go do some stuff with them. And again, to your point, important to give back. Important to make sure that our people were highly educated, highly skilled, aware of everything that was going on in the community, and that we could be part of that. So that was the issue. But I didn't, from an SAP perspective, we were big enough that if I needed something from SAP, I would just pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
But, we needed that community exposure. So that was my first exposure to ASUG, and it was tremendous. And then when I was working for a much smaller company, I realized, my light bulb went off, that the smaller you are, the less attention you get directly from SAP. It's crazy. So I don't know. I was the first to learn this. I didn't realize this was happening. So I needed ASUG because ASUG gave me size and scope that I wouldn't get on my own. I mean, we were interesting to SAP in the sense of who we were, why we were, what we were, but not enough to get them to jump, and do cartwheels over us. So we did, I saw ASUG through that lens, and they asked me to join the board. And then from the board, they said, hey, would you like to run this full time? And I said, absolutely not. I am not interested in that. And I went home and I thought about it. And I said, wait a minute here. I can be a CIO for the rest of my career and, be responsible working for a CEO or a CFO, or I can have the chance to step into the role you and I share today, which is to actually run an organization. Right. And I thought that would be great. And that was 11, almost 12 years ago. And I've been, I know. I look much younger than that. You look at me and think, hey, this guy's in his 20s. Where did all those years come from? But I'm aging. 30s, but I mean, I'm aging really fast. So it's been almost 12 years in the role.
Wow.
You asked one question and I went on.
I know, but I love it though.
30 minutes.
I
apologize.
Your
audience is now asleep. And I apologize for that.
I don't think our audience is asleep. That was an interesting summary. One thing I did realize, I guess I didn't realize we had it in common as well, is that I also wanted to be an architect.
Oh.
And then was told that there's no money in that.
We've lost our way. We should find money in architecture and go back and do our true passion.
Somebody told us that, and you went accounting, I went engineering, and somewhere we found our way back to technology.
But then we both are doing engineering and accounting, right? So
it's same thing.
If you're running a business, you have to do some level of accounting.
All accounting's engineering, isn't it?
I think so. And isn't computer science and IT and being an SAP engineering too? I think so.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
So in that kind of line of all those companies you work with, was there a company that was PE owned at some point?
Way back in my career, at my earliest stages, when I exited consulting, I went to work for a partner-led PE firm, small, tiny scale.
Okay.
And that was where I started, but it was relatively short-lived.
Short-lived. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed I asked for some questions about
Yeah.
this podcast, and I said to my team, "Can you tell me what I'm coming onto this thing to talk about? I'm not sure I completely trust Martin and where he's going to go." And I got back a whole bunch of PE questions, and I was reading those as I was preparing for our conversation. I'm like, none of this has any relevancy to me. So if you want to talk about a whole bunch of PE stuff, I'm going to run out of interesting conversations really fast.
Yeah, that's
I do have a number of our board members who do work for PE firms and some of our mutual friends, but me personally, no.
No, and I think where we'll go with that is we've come to realize that PE firms really just put a spotlight on a thing that's supposed to be important to all businesses, which is cash and profitability.
Yes.
And every business has measures it, and they measure 100 other things, and then they kind of work their way through it. What PE firms typically do, or any form of private firm, really goes and says, hey, these are the really important things. And why this topic is becoming more and more relevant, it's less about whether you have the experience of being owned by that or not. It's more just that it's lacking in many businesses to come back to that piece being a focus. And when that becomes a focus, you can then start kind of eliminating all of the non-essential stuff that causes people not to get where they need to get to. And how that translates to the SAP world is maybe some of the processes you use are old. Some of the things you can let go of, some of those spreadsheets, some of those customizations, some of those things that people tend to build over. It's this drag, right? This strategic drag that they kind of build up as they go along because they're missing that. And so when you kind of put the focus back on, hey, profitability and cash flow, right, then almost everything else kind of falls in line with that.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack in a few short sentences. So I think everything in moderation is good. And my sense is we're going through a period of time at the moment where everything seems to be around private equity. And I think my perspective is if you would grant me a little bit of leniency here, it would also potentially drive a more shorter term versus longer term thinking.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, what is a PE firm really interested in?
Yeah.
Exit.
Right.
They want to hand that asset off to someone else.
Yeah.
So they may not be
hence that focus on EBITDA and on cash.
Right. I mean, it's saying, hey, I'm going to put in $100 and I want to get out 500 in as short a time as possible, right? They are not long-term investors in a business. They are looking for that exit. They're looking to move that asset onto someone else.
Yeah.
You know, they're like someone who buys a house, puts in some new cabinetry, flips it, and moves on, right? And so the challenge I see with some of the thinking in PE firms is some of the investments in SAP, rightly or wrongly, Martin, are really intended to have a multi-year payback. And so sometimes with PE firms, that look at that when they have to put in a lot of money and the payback might be outside their investment window, they may be more reticent to do that. And I understand that, and that's okay. So I just think in moderation, I agree with your principle that cash flow, business case are important, as long as we're trying to understand how do you unlock the most value for that firm over time.
Right.
So, and to your point, I think the other challenge is the longer you get, or the bigger the organization gets, I should say that differently. The bigger the organization gets, the harder it is for the people inside that organization as they move down in the organizational ladder to understand some of those things that you and I, in running smaller organizations, understand, right? The idea of profitability, P&L, expenses, capitalization, how much will this process change actually inject back in? For people working for multi-billion-dollar companies, that is a much harder thing to understand and deal with. So we did last week, we do a number of events. We do close to 200 to 300 events a year. But one of the big events we did last week was ASUG Tech Connect, which is a combination, a hybrid of SAP Tech Ed and ASUG Tech Connect. We bring them together, and it's really meant to help more of the SAP, individual contributor, practitioner, manager, not the senior level decision maker, really understand how to do wonderful things with this technology. We did a business case session there with some of the people from the SAP value engineering team. And we had a packed room of people who, when you listen to them and watch them, many of them were struggling with how to do basic business cases. And, some of these things that you and I take for granted are not, rolling off their tongues. They don't understand some of the things. So we were thrilled to give them that exposure. And one of the things they asked me to come in and kind of kick off the session. We had a couple of thousand people there, and they asked me to come in. And I looked around the room and I said, I want to get some feedback from you. What is the number one thing that you think I'm looking for as a CEO in a business case? And it took them a couple minutes to get there. Someone finally yelled it out. And so I'm going to challenge you for a moment. You said I could ask you questions.
Sure.
You run a business, I run a business. Yeah. What is the number one thing that you look in a business case?
In a business case?
Yeah.
Absolutely. A return on investment.
Okay.
Not the traditional ROI, I pay this, I get that.
Yeah.
More from, hey, if I'm going to take my asset of cash, invest it, how long is the payback for that?
Okay, so that's one answer. That wasn't the answer I think about. So let's play you out a little bit more. Yeah, let's go for it. What else do you look for?
I look for cash returns and
I'm the accountant in this conversation.
But I'm the CEO.
Yeah, okay.
Is that the role I'm playing?
You can play whatever role you want. This is your podcast.
Okay, so if I'm the CEO role, now if I'm a COO, I may look differently at it.
Okay.
I may say, hey, what is the throughput that I'm going to increase by investing in ABC?
You are an engineer by training.
Yes.
I'm going to give you something just to play this out that where I went with this group.
Love it.
And the word I used was passion. What's the number one thing I start with? Passion. Come to me and demonstrate to me that you're not just putting this together in a cute spreadsheet, but you're actually committing to it. You're putting your skin in the game. You're saying, hey, Martin, if you give me this, I guarantee you this outcome. I'm going to put my reputation on the line. I'm going to do some things to make sure that this happens. Because I think in a business case, it can be very transactional and it can be very pro forma.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like people go, well, if you give me $1,000, I'll do this. And you're like, well, okay. But, that's not terribly convincing. So first of all, the odds of everyone doing a really good business case, I think you and I have experienced, is relatively low. And you have enough experience, I have enough experience to put any business case in front of me, and I'm largely going to be able to pick it apart, right? And I want the passion, because the passion for me now, if it's a business case that's awful and you have passion, that doesn't work.
That doesn't work either.
That doesn't work either, right? Yeah. But I was assuming the business case is a good business case. And you bring me passion versus someone else who just says, hey, here you go. Yeah. Here's the spreadsheet. Yeah. Here's what we're saying. Give us some money and we'll get this done. I'll take the passion every day because it tells me you're in it.
How are you defining passion? How do you quantify
energy?
It? Yeah.
Energy, engagement, willingness to take a risk. Yeah. Willingness to look at that and say, I might not have this figured out, but I'm going to figure out how to make this work. Give me those things, and I think that is incredibly. I'll buy into that. Right? I'll buy into that more. If you give me a mediocre business case, but you're on it and you're like, I'm going to make this happen, I'm in.
Yeah.
If you give me a mediocre business case and you're just kind of like academic about it, not really. And if you give me a brilliant case, and you also can't carry it through, I might be hesitant too. Because the next thing about the business case, right, is it's great to just say, okay, I'm going to give you this money and you'll get this return. But you also need a project management skill. You also need other things to make that happen.
Do you think that most executives think like that, or do you think they lean towards the things I pulled out, which 100% is all financial metrics?
100% what you lean to, which is easy, right? It takes all that passion and creativity.
That's right.
I mean, you and I said that we were both wanted to be architects, right? That's a creative expression, right? Now it needs engineering, right? You can't just make a building out of anything. The building has to be able to stand, or we hope, right? So eventually you need engineering to back it up, but it starts with the creativity. Yeah. And so maybe in the same way, that's what I'm suggesting out of business cases. Yes, I need you to have the financials behind it. That's the engineering that demonstrates to me that the building can stand.
Yeah.
But what precedes that?
Yeah.
Vision.
Yeah.
You have a vision. You're willing to do this. And the other thing I said to the group is you also have to be able to withstand the no's, right? You and I as CEOs know that the easiest answer for us is no, right? Or it's, and it may not be no, because no is kind of an aggressive word, but you might go, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not so sure.
Yeah.
Maybe
Go refine.
drag.
Right. Yeah,
No. Maybe we could talk about this next week, right? Why don't you go think about this, right? So, so many of the teams I've come in contact with, they hit that first brick wall and they stop. And for me,
Is that a lack of passion?
it could be a lack of passion, could be a lack of vision, right?
Right.
Or it could be easy. Oh, he said no, so never mind.
Right.
Versus saying, hey, how do I've always said that, the spoils go to the people who can go over the wall, under the wall, around the wall, through the wall. I see a wall as a wall,
Right.
something that should be broken through. Many people see that wall as a place to stop.
Yeah.
So
No, it's just one obstacle
Yeah.
of probably 10 you're still going to pursue, and you got to work your way around it. I love that though. I want to harp on that a little bit because I
you're going
think
to harp on it. Okay.
maybe not the harp you think, yeah.
Yeah, where's the harp? Can you get a harp in the studio?
I love the fact that passion is such a big part of it, and based on what you're saying, because I think a lot of people that have implemented the technology over the years have lost the passion.
I think that's true.
It may have been exciting. It became a career because it's a sought after skill, but after 10, 20 years of doing the same thing and hearing the same no's or hearing the same issues or dealing with business people that don't want to change, whatever it is. I mean, at some point, I think people have lost the passion to want to make that shift.
And maybe the other word to weave into that is they've become risk adverse, right? So passion, I think, if you believe in something, you're willing to take a risk in order to achieve that goal.
Right.
Whereas if you're just like, well, here you go, Martin, here's the business case.
Right.
Are you really willing to take that risk?
Yeah.
Are you really to put your neck out on the line? No.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, to your point, where some of this gets a little funky. And, the elephant in the room for you and I always is the cost involved in implementing an ERP like SAP, right? And, as people try to de-risk everything, one of the magical outcomes of de-risking is upping your cost.
Yeah.
Right? And so now these things come in at these massive, massive numbers that maybe some creativity, some ingenuity, some willing to think differently would yield a different outcome.
I love that. I love it. And the other thing that I harp on a lot actually too is just the whole SAP as an asset mindset.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
I don't mean to.
No, I know. No. I actually divert away from the word tool because I think people get caught up in it's just something I can choose to use or not. And where I talk about it from an asset perspective is if you think of a manufacturing organization that goes out and builds a plant or builds a piece of equipment and spends $10, $20 million on it, and they utilize it at 30% or less, they're going to get fired. Yeah. Unless there's a strategic decision to keep that kind of a capacity. But for the most part, people will not invest in a massive asset and then decide to use only a part of it or underutilize it.
That's a complicated conversation. You and I could
absolutely
hours to that.
For sure. And I'm not talking the accounting asset where it's on your balance sheet stuff. I'm just talking from a mindset point of view. Yeah. And then to think of it in that sense, and then to be able to say, okay, how do I now actually make this asset work for me, right? And usually the reasons why it doesn't is because of a lot of the challenges they face, right? Either it's process, customization, spreadsheets, whatever.
It's always people, isn't it?
It's always people. It's always a people thing. It's I've always done it that way, or you don't understand that we're different, all the normal stuff, right? But ultimately the leaders don't see it as an asset. They see it in many ways as that tool that people can choose to use or not. And in reality is if that mindset shifts and you add that passion component that you talk about, you can really get behind this investment and say, how do I make this thing actually matter in my business? Yeah. Because right now, you can ask, and you probably heard this in your convention last week, most people putting things in, they're getting to solve a particular problem. They're not moving the needle from an organizational perspective. the organization isn't moving from A to B to C in a radical, fast way, or even changing business models yet. Some of them do, but for the most part, it's really still about point solutions here and there. And they haven't moved the needle. And the issue isn't the version of SAP, whether it's cloud or ECC or back in the R2 days, right? You and I, the mainframe. Yeah, I mean,
way back.
We were both old enough to know about
it's like going back to the blues or, early jazz or something, right?
But the principles are the same. I mean, jazz is long lasting because the principles are the same. It's technology requires data, people, passion to move it.
People, process, technology, right? So may I wander a little bit afield for you?
Sure.
Most of your audience that's listening to your podcast are SAP practitioners, I think you mentioned, right? I mean, or that somehow they're involved in SAP. They may not be they're not the IT
mostly
people,
on the client side and the business side.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about in my role at ASUG is, and one of the things I've been really pushing on everyone to do, back to some of your earlier commentary, is a massive return to out-of-the-box standard functionality.
Absolutely.
That we as customers, whether we're on the IT side, and I hate to use the word side, because we're supposed to be in this together, right? We're supposed to be one organization. But as organizations think about their future technology investment, most SAP customers, to your point, have been at this a long time. They bought the asset many, many years ago. And instead of kind of rethinking it, they've just made incremental changes to it. They've slowly contorted it, twisted it, changed it to fit their view of the world.
That's right.
We're entering into a very different era. This era of AI, whether you believe it or not, whether you buy in or you don't, whether you think it's a bubble about to burst, it is going to fundamentally change the way we think about data and the way we think about technology, the way we think about these tools. And AI is just another tool. But in order to get value out of AI, you cannot work in a custom environment. What I've been saying to all of the 130,000 SAP professionals inside of ASUG is we have got to return to standard. We have got to be very careful about the customizations we make, because the problem we're going to run into is if we continue to recustomize this asset, it will not give us the return we need.
100%.
And that gets caught up in a lot of friction, right? And so to me, I would like to see us as customers push most of the responsibility for the software product back to SAP, right? I would like to see, in a perfect world, and we don't live in a perfect world, I would like to see us as customers implement a lot more of their what they call public cloud solution, what I call SaaS, into your environments, where you're pushing that responsibility back to the software vendor.
Right.
You're not using an SI to bridge it. You're not using your internal staff to make it do something different. And the reason I say that is because if we really want to unlock future innovation, we can't be customizing everything.
Yeah.
We can't. We will not be able to afford the bill it takes to do all that. And then when AI comes along, and redo all that and customize all of that. Eventually, I've just decided that technology in general, the technology industry, the SAPs, the Oracles, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles, right? The NVIDIAs, the Palantirs, the Accenture, Deloitte, the whole gamut are out there to largely eat up every single dollar of OBIT we have. They will not stop until the bottom line of the business is zero or less, right? Because the technology continues to be the massive driver, right? I mean, everyone's on a phone, right? Even today in this podcast studio, I brought my iPad in because I wasn't sure whether you were going to ask questions that I needed statistics for, right? But in addition, this is a nice little safety. This keeps me safe, right? It makes me feel like I can do your iPhone, right? You and I don't have our phones in this studio either, but we're starting to twitch because we want to see what's coming in between, right? Even my 88-year-old father has got his phone in his hand 24/7, right? And it's like, but that's technology, right? That's that technology slowly eating everything in its path.
Right.
And so the only way we get ahead of that, we will never have less technology in our businesses. We will never, ever have it. The only way to get value out of this is to return to standard and to believe that the software companies like SAP do it better, which means that the COOs and the CFOs and the accounting teams need to accept the standard reports
That's right.
as delivered, and this is in your business, and processes,
Mm-hmm.
and really only modify when there is beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is necessary to the secret sauce of the business. Not because that's the way you want to see it on a report, not that's because you fundamentally believe in your career that's the way to do it, but because you actually can demonstrate sustainable economic advantage by doing it.
That's right.
And then, Martin, fund the IT organization to deliver that on a sustained basis year over year over year. How much did it cost for you to make that modification? And then add that to the IT budget every single year until you take it out, right? And I think what we've done in many organizations is we've defunded over time IT. We've taken people out. And at the end of the day, it's a people business, right? We can talk about technology all we want, but it's people who create it.
Absolutely.
People who maintain it. So you take all the people out, and then you don't have people to maintain it, and then you have all these zombie processes running, and no one knows what they're doing, and everyone's afraid to take them out for fear that if you take it out, it doesn't have an immediate reflexive reaction. It takes a couple weeks, and you're like, oh, that's what that was doing. And now I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of data damage, right? Where I'm like, well, I took that process out, and the data's gone. I don't know what to do, and everyone's freaking out. Right. And so I think that's kind of the quagmire we've put ourselves in. So when SAP 50 years ago put the software in place, they said, we're going to create a platform for you and you customize to your heart's content. Right. 50 years hence, we got to 180 that and say, no, SAP. I'm not customizing this for me. You need to customize this for us.
Right. No, I love that. And I think that is a message that, unfortunately, as you said, because of the last 50 years, has allowed us to, well, SAP's allowed the customer base to basically dictate how they believe they want to run their business.
We've built a whole industry around it, right? SAP, the entire system integrator market.
Almost all SIs depend on those
has been
programs.
Built around this.
That's right.
And it's not a $1 million business. It's $1 trillion industry, right? And we've taken and we've unloaded, North American IT talent and moved it all over the world to find a lower labor price to maintain all that.
That's right.
And what has that exchanged with? Quality and understanding. Right. So, now I'm going to go to my, my managed service provider who is not interested in modernizing my software. Their job is to keep it running and say, guess what? I want to have a new vision. I want this all to work different. They're like, I got to keep that
fix that report.
I fix that report. I don't know what it does. I don't care what it does. I got 50 other clients I'm working for.
And, I'm going to add to that a little bit because I think that you're hitting on something that's key. And our world is we've been preaching that for literally 20 years, this year even. And the thing is, there's an ownership component that's really key here. And that is on the business side needs to know that, understand that, so they can put the pressure back on their teams to put, the pressure back onto SAP, et cetera. And as long as you have an IT organization that services a business and the business isn't held accountable to that, they're going to say, hey, build me this, build me that. One of the reasons that I think also is causing all of this future failures that we're dealing with, or current failures and will impact future failures, is the data integrity ownership. Again, let's use AI as an example, right? Your 80-year-old dad who's on his phone all the time. He wouldn't be on his phone all the time.
Can't text.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds about right. But he wouldn't be on his phone if he didn't trust what he's getting. Right? And it's the same with AI. We think of AI as going to...
Oh, it flat out lies to you.
It flat out lies to you, and it's going to accelerate the chaos. So if you have transactional issues and you're having mass data issues and you've got all these data integrity challenges, which is a business problem, by the way. It's not an SAP problem, and it's not even an IT problem. It is a business problem. If they don't understand that they got to get their hand around that, plus the lack of customization, or let's say removal of customizations, they're never really going to get the value out of this technology. And it doesn't matter then whether it's the latest or greatest cloud version whiz bang AI forced or induced system, it's not going to give them what they want because they're going to get chaotic data in a custom world that doesn't give anybody trust in the system.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo, because you customized it.
Yeah.
Right.
And no scalability.
So much to unpack there in your few sentences. I was in Redmond. I go to Redmond frequently to talk with Microsoft. But I was there maybe 2 years ago, and they asked me to kind of come in and give my perspective on the SAP ecosystem, because they're massive partners with SAP.
Yeah.
And I was listening to one of their leading AI scientists. And the first slide he put up on the screens in the room, maybe 30 of us in the room, and it stuck with me this entire time, it's all his slide said, AI is just math.
Yeah.
Right. And it's spot on.
It's a probability predictor.
It's a probability.
Yeah.
I think of AI today. There's this. I've been watching on YouTube because that's an algorithm that's just suited to figure you out, right?
Yeah.
Just feeds you more of your own goo, which is kind of what AI does. These mentalists are now all the rage. I went to a charity event a couple of weeks ago. I had a mentalist for the evening, right? And they're showing up in training camps, and they're showing up.
Nice.
It's a good thing to be. And so I was at this event, and after it was done, I talked to the mentalist for a few minutes, and I said to him, so like, what's your magic? And he goes, improv. I can read your face, so I know when I'm getting close.
Yeah.
And I never get super specific. So you think I gave you the answer, and if you actually listened to me,
Yeah.
I sort of gave you a general ballpark answer,
Right.
and you said yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the art of deflection.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5 things. And I said, oh, kind of sort of like AI. And he said, pretty much, right? I mean, because if you think about it, how many times you write an AI prompt where you've actually led with the answer you're looking for. And then when it feeds it back, it's just telling you what you already suspected.
Right.
It hasn't worked that hard, So I think that, it's usually sunny in the morning, right? Geoff, fantastic observation. You're on it. It usually is sunny in the morning. Great. Right? I mean, we're, just like every other business, right? We're playing around with agentic bots inside of ASUG.
Sure.
We're doing a lot of work with that. And, what I found is it does a good job summarizing text.
Yep.
But what did it leave on the floor? So it came up with a summary. I went, oh my God, amazing. Right? But I'm like, wait a minute, that was an 80-page document. You gave me three, 4 paragraphs. What'd you leave out?
Yeah.
Right? And was there maybes? How did you determine that there weren't more salient points to be made in the other 70 pages that were there? Now, I'm never going to read it, so I appreciate you gave that to me, but are you right? Right? And the other thing we recognize is it sucks at math. And when we get to ERP, everything in ERP is largely math-based.
Right.
So, I would say to it, we were playing around with an agentic bot for our podcasting platform. And early in the days of this, and it took us a lot of time to get this, how many downloads did we have last week? And it would make a number up. And I'd be looking at the spreadsheet, and I'd be like, that number's not right. Where did you come? Well, I extrapolated that number. Extrapolated it from what?
Right.
And it's like talking to a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Well, and just think about it. You've got that accounting background, and somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's our inventory. And you're like, or whatever, profitability. And you're like, okay, show me how you got there. And you're like, oh, I can't because it's the black box and the AI.
Right. And then I'm going to run the prompt again and get a completely different answer.
Yeah. And you're not going to trust any of that. No. So why do you think, and why do we, in the world that we live in, why do we think that the businesses still think that it's a silver bullet?
Oh, yeah.
And why do we think SAP is not understanding the largely base principle of customization and data integrity still being the bigger challenge that's been around for 50 years, frankly, right? Why do we not address that versus...
Here's my thesis on this, Martin. Great question. Unlike most other technologies, AI, generative AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, started off as largely a consumer tool. Making really interesting insights based on huge volumes of text, right? It can scan encyclopedias and it can summarize words and it can do the math, right? So it grabbed the attention of a lot of people because of all the cool things you could purportedly do with it. And by the way, I'm not an AI hater. I think some of the stuff it does, I'm probably using, I've got big time subscriptions to Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot. We got them all, right? And I'm mesmerized. I'm blown away by some of the stuff that Claude Code can do in writing code. Wow, right? Stuff that it writes code better than I could ever imagine to be able to write. I don't have the patience for it either anymore. But at the end of the day, it started off as a consumer tool. It invaded the boardroom first.
Yeah.
It started at the board level where people go, oh, wow, I was on ChatGPT over the weekend and I asked it a question.
What is your AI strategy, Mr. CEO?
And out came all this stuff, right? And it was amazing. And hey, Martin, you're the CIO. What are you doing about it? And you're like, what?
And something like 90% of pilot AIs are failing right now.
Are failing. So the other thing that I think happens is many of these boards are now bringing in technology board members. And I had a CIO friend of mine recount to me this story, and he said, "Yep, I got the technology guy on the board now. He's from one of the big, Silicon Valley firms." But he doesn't really do any of the AI stuff. He's like in some, they went after the name, not what the person does. So this person's on the board now and they're kind of spouting AI techno stuff. And if you really kind of looked at their background, you would say they don't know anything about this. But the board's listening to this guy.
Yeah.
And he's saying all this stuff and then it's hitting my office. And I'm being asked to do all this stuff, and I'm the one behind.
Right.
And I'm the one who isn't doing it, and I'm the one who doesn't get it when I'm trying to figure out how to make that work inside of an organization. So back to my ASUG example, we have a lot of AI agents running around ASUG. We've released none of them to the general public because they're not trustworthy.
Yep.
Right? So we're playing with them and they're getting better every time. But by the way, so instead of me writing code, I'm just going to write prompts. It's not terribly different. It's actually in some ways more tedious, right? But I haven't taken out the need to have developers around. I've just changed what they do. And I think a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, if we do this AI stuff, we don't need developers anymore. Not so fast.
Right.
You just need a different kind of developer. And what I found and why I find that Claude Code to be so interesting is because it requires me to think like a developer again instead of me getting lost in the weeds of writing code.
Right.
I still need the development skill. How do you write a structured program? How do you actually step through requirements? How do you make sure those requirements in today's modern world where I can maybe type my requirements into an AI prompt, what if my sentences are contradictory? What if in one paragraph I say, I want this process to do this, and the third paragraph down, because the other downside of this is you can't write it in one sentence, and the cuter you write it in one sentence, the less reflective it is.
Right.
And my third paragraph negates my first. How do you want the AI to respond?
Right.
What do you want it to do? And when it doesn't, when it creates contradictory results for you, you gave it what you asked for. So, in many ways, I think a lot of the stuff, and by the way, it is getting better. It's the worst it'll ever be, but it's not ready for prime time.
Yeah.
That's my view on it.
Well, and I still come back to the fact that even with all of the challenges we're dealing with AI and where we know it's going to go, futuristically, it's obviously going to be powerful. We already use a lot of it. There's still fundamental principles to your earlier point about, hey, get your standardized processes, common in the box, get your data to actually be trustworthy, and then get the people to know what to do with it.
Right, and put your data where it's supposed to be.
That's right.
Not stashed in corners and closets.
Not little personal information systems and stuff like that, right? So if those are three basic principles, and AI, as you said, is just another technological layer on top of those principles that says, if I don't have a stable system, standardized process, if I don't have the right data that I trust, and the people don't know what to do with it,
so
the technology doesn't change.
Coming back to architecture and coming back to the metaphor of ERP at 50 years old. You and I think, had dinner a number of months ago, and we were talking about we're at that stage of our life where our kids are out of the house.
Yeah.
We have this house, and the house probably at some point should be downsized, but there's junk in the house, and someone's got to deal with the junk in the house, and no one wants to touch the junk in the house, right? Like, oh my God, this is exhausting. If you remember this conversation, right? Let's use that as a metaphor for ERP, right? Your ERP is 50 years old. It's got junk all over the place, and you need to spruce it up to make sure that you can actually unwind it and sell it because you want to downsize it. Well, who's going to do all that work? Right. And if you don't do all that work and then you put it up for sale and someone walks through it and you're like, why are there 50-year-old plants sitting in a closet, jammed in a closet somewhere? Like, well, that's where we put it.
Gathering mold.
Yeah, it's where we put it when we couldn't figure out any place else to put it, or the kids' Legos or whatever it is, right? And everything's got sentiment. This is a great analogy, Martin. Everything in every closet in your house has some sort of sentimental value.
That's what an old process is.
Can't throw it out.
Right?
Can't throw it out. What if we need that 10 years from now?
Yeah.
And then you go, well, I'm going to use AI. And AI to do what? It doesn't understand that that's junk. It just wanders through.
I love that though, because in the reality is you're not going to be able to sell that house for the value it is if you show it with all the junk in it.
Right. What do people do? They unload their house, they put it all in storage containers, and they move in brand new furniture and they stage it.
Right. And why do people not understand then with the same junk in their technology, like an ERP, like SAP, why I keep referring to it as an asset, because it's the nervous system of your business, right? If that's the case, you got all that junk in it, why do we not recognize that it's not going to give you the value, i.e. home price, that you expect?
Because I think that practically speaking, when you're in large scale enterprises, while we all get it, the road to do that is incredibly complicated.
It's daunting.
Yeah, it's daunting, right? I mean, I remember back when I was a CIO, we had archiving projects going.
Oh, yeah.
And, SAP archiving is a magical thing, all right? And I was just like watching these teams just grind away at archiving. I was like, this is an exercise in futility, because the business is incentivized to keep it all and IT is trying to get it out. And there's a million reasons why I might need that in the future. And to me, now coming full circle, those archiving processes are probably some of the most important ones you could have done to keep the system.
Yeah.
And we would come at archiving not through the lens of process purity, but because the system was getting too big, and the more data, the worse the response time.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a technical problem. It's actually a business problem.
It's a business problem.
Because now I got all this junk sitting
that
around
has a technical
that has no,
impact,
that has no relevance.
So coming back to the question, how do we get executives to recognize the fundamental principles that are broken? Not the technology, not necessarily the way that was implemented or that. It is these fundamental principles that we still continue to customize. We still don't put the disciplines in around the data, and we don't teach our people how to use this technology effectively.
I probably won't answer the question the way that you've asked it, but let me try this on you. The one that disconnects I see is that IT has an enterprise responsibility, but most of the areas of the business are not optimized to the enterprise. They're optimized to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in finance,
That's right.
I'm optimized to finance. If I'm in procurement, I'm optimized to procurement. If I'm in operations, I'm optimized to plant floor optimization, right? And so I'm not incentivized when I come to the table to think about the enterprise, and nor am I incentivized to take one for the team in order to get a better realistic outcome. So when IT comes to the table, first of all, I still think that there's too few IT executives at the table. Mm-hmm. I also think that many of them don't deserve to be. That's a whole nother conversation. What are the characteristics you would need to be at the table? But at the same time, you're not incentivized to take that risk. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening inside of the enterprise, and this is where I think we're going to get death by 1,000 pinpricks. Unless the CEO is really willing to step in, and I understand why many of them are not, because this is not fun work, and really, really administer this from the top down and have everyone demonstrate why they can't adopt standard.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, talk about ingenuity. There's a lot of ingenuity out there when people say, here's why I can't adopt standard. And they put out this, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Right. But, you're protecting your turf.
Yeah.
And I do get it, by the way, the change management, in all fairness, Martin, change management at an organization of 10, 20, 100,000, 200, 300,000 people that has global operations, changing warehouse workflows is not a trivial task.
Right.
You don't just do it on a Tuesday afternoon. Right? You got to really think that through. And the rollout of that, again, back to why is SAP the way it is? Because it's not just one plant in one production line. It's 50 plants or 100 plants that need to be adjusted and changed. And that is hard. I remember Yeah, I remember when I was, a CIO and I was on the warehousing floor, and we were shipping thousands of container trucks a day. And you realize that most of your warehouse operators I'm going back years now, didn't even know how to use a mouse.
Right.
Right. And and a scan gun was a foreign object to them. And I would watch them literally load pallets on the wrong truck. Right? They would scan the pallet, scan the truck, load it on anyway, like you put that on the wrong truck. And it wasn't like, an insignificant amount of product. It was $20, $30, $40, $50,000 worth of product. Like, I don't know what else to do. Scan the pallet, scan the truck. If it says don't do it, don't do it. And you did it anyway. Right? So there's only so far we can go. But, some of this technology is super sophisticated, super hard, and takes a long time to implement.
And this is where I think we come full circle back to the PE conversation we said again. One thing that PE...
Principles of PE.
The principles of PE, you're right, not specifically PE, but the principles of PE that says, at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most are these two things. Like essentially the essentials of the business, profitability and cash. What you just said there earlier is so important in the sense that there's lacking leadership in a CEO and executive level that says, from a technological perspective, we're going to have two goals.
Right.
Not 3, 4, 5, 20 per process, per functional area, per this.
Yeah.
What are those goals? One goal is zero customizations.
Could be a way. So I think you're right. You have to take that role of profitability.
But how do they link that back to business benefit?
And you have to have to be able to take it down through the organization in a way that the people at the lower levels can understand that in order to have it roll up. And it won't roll up perfectly. No. But if you're in an organization of, stop. I have an organization of 100 people. I guarantee you that 80% of that organization does not understand what you and I are discussing, profitability, right? Their job is to come in and do these tasks. Right. How that manifests itself up through the financial statements is not of their interest.
That's right.
Right. So even at the smallest organizations, you see a massive divergence off of what you and I care about, and the whole organization wanders away. But so what we have to do as leaders, our responsibility, is to figure out how to distill that down into the types of things that those people can understand and work on.
Well, and in many ways, it could become as simple as saying to them, okay, you want to do this. How is that? Show me. Passion. Right. How is that going to change a profitability component of this process or the cash flow?
There's a book, Entrepreneurial Operating
With passion,
System.
of course.
Always a passion. Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS.
Oh, yeah.
That talks about everyone should have one metric.
Yeah.
I think that's spot on. I don't even have that in my organization.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I can't seem to, and my team is stumbling and working really hard to pull that off. Yeah. But it's right? Because if I have one metric, I can have one goal, I can work on that goal, and I can...
Everybody works.
Right. It sounds so simple. It sounds so easy, and it's not.
No, it's not.
All right, bring us home, Martin. We've been at this for a while now.
Well, I mean, we've talked everything from architecture to, the storied careers that we've had, running multi-billion-dollar businesses to...
Maybe a part of your audience is still awake. I don't know.
I think they are. I think there's plenty of juice here. I think, honestly, I just love, the passion. I mean, if you talk about, you just brought that up as a key metric for companies in terms of being able to show how their business cases are working. You epitomize passion. So I love it. So,
but in what direction?
No, in the good direction, in the positive. You're just bringing so much passion around the things we talked about. Everything about it was passionate. And I think that's what's missing. I agree with you. I love that you call that out, because without passion, any of these financial metrics is just not going to have the energy and juice behind it. And I think that's where we need to go. And I think where we need to play a role between our organizations, which has very different goals, but ultimately the same mission, right? And that is to help these companies figure out how to get the most out of this technology. We need to have these conversations with executives. We need to be sitting down with them saying, what are you driving? What is your message? Yeah. What are you trying to achieve? And do you understand this investment? Do you understand that it's actually something that can generate profitability and cash for you? Or do you just see it as something that's going to give you your financial reports at the end of the year?
Yeah, and to your point, I think a lot of them see the latter, not the former. And
100%.
as you and I have been talking over the years, right, one of the things that gives you the most pause and concern and frustrates you is how many of these organizations have implemented SAP and don't understand how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? That you look at it and go, you've taken everything out, put it back in spreadsheets. I can show you how to do what you need to do inside of SAP in order to get the business of your business done. And it's crazy.
It's great. So sadly, it's 9 out of 10 companies.
Yeah. I don't know whether that's a dereliction on behalf of the IT organization, the business organizations, combination of both, combination of neither, right? I mean, this is varsity level stuff.
I think it's all of the above, and I will always bring it back to leadership. If you don't have strong, definitive, directive leadership, then the teams are going to just do what they think they need to do.
Or they'll just perpetuate the old thing, right? This is the way yours and my biggest enemy this is the way we've always done it.
That's right.
Well, where did that start? Like, I don't know.
Let's keep accelerating the chaos.
Great to spend some time with you, Martin.
Yeah, this was amazing.
Wonderful.
Geoff, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.